Hey everyone, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today for Stable Stories. This is a special one. I'm guest hosting, as I do every once in a while, with good friends. Just a reminder, Stable Stories is a video series that explores behind-the-scenes experiences, learnings, and insights of builders in the stablecoin space. It's produced by Eco with our friends. And today, that friend is Anna Yuan from Perena, the founder of Perena, a friend that I have made in this space over the course of the last year, especially. And so I wanted to join this one myself, host this one myself, and see where the conversation leads us. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. And hello, here is my cat who just joined. I am Anna, and this is Fizz. I'm the founder of Perena. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, for sure. Let's nerd out. We were talking before we opened it up. This is my organic background. This is real, not a filter. This is for the occasion. Normally I would have my blank wall or something, but I'm visiting family right now, and I said to myself, what better than to keep the organic background for this conversation, and let's keep the brand aesthetic as best I can.
Yeah, amazing. And I don't have an organic background, but here's a little thing.
Yeah, I'm not touching grass, but I'm sitting in front of some right now.
Sitting in front of grass.
Doing the best I can in crypto today. All right. Autobiography. First question. At least relevant autobiography. Not everybody listening will know just how OG of a stablecoin person you are. You might sort of have the trophy on that in this series. So take us back. Early days of crypto, early days of stables. Sort of give us the couple minute rundown of how you ended up here, what got you into this space initially, and why you're a stablecoin nerd or have become one along the way.
Yeah, sure. My first time using stablecoins was 2017 when I was transferring, I think, Tether from different exchanges. And I was very new to crypto at the time. So I saw there was ERC20, and then there was another option called TRC. And then the very few online tutorials and friends I have were like, yeah, TRC is the cheaper version of ERC. So I kind of just picked whichever one and then used it. Fast forward to 2022, I joined Solana Labs on the payments team. And then a couple months in, I realized nobody had any stablecoins to pay with. So there's no payments to be done on chain. I think by now, a lot of people, including many of the guests on Stable Stories, have a much better understanding of why people don't have stablecoins and how to convince them to get there. But back then, my natural reaction was, okay, let's go full steam to get people to acquire and hold stablecoins. A couple of the key insights were, so I'm an immigrant, I've lived around the world, and sending money to different countries while living in different countries was a major pain point. And this is kind of like how people think about on and off ramps. If you think about it this way, as cross-border payments, especially to some of the harder to send to or receive countries, this is the level of friction and how people manage their assets is you have multiple balance sheets. So in the beginning, it was like we tried a lot of different things. I attempted to improve on and off ramps. I attempted to introduce non-dollar stablecoins, increase yield, so on and so forth. So the last couple of years, I was working on that at Solana Foundation, including explaining to exchanges that Solana does not own Circle post FTX. And very, very, looking back, it was very basic explanation of how stablecoins worked, because frankly, people even in crypto didn't really know how stablecoins work. But yeah, since then, last year, I jumped ship to come out myself and build Perena.
Great. You had an Ethereum season before that, right? Yeah. And so talk to us about sort of, the evolution, kind of what you saw in the early and evolving Ethereum stablecoin space, and then the jump to the Solana ecosystem from there.
For sure. So I think as like a humble OG, quote unquote, as I am, I missed out on the DeFi summer period a bit. So I went from the really bad UX to suddenly meeting Solana and then experiencing a much better consumer UX. So when I first started using Ethereum, it was like the Ether Delta era, like first DEX. I don't think even we didn't have anything. And the way people thought about stablecoins was a lot different. I wish the industry and the people then had the foresight. It was just like, oh, I have $1. I need to have $1 on chain so I can trade. That was kind of it. And then evolved into when I got reintroduced to Solana in 2021, it was cheap. You can use it to mint. You could use it to mint NFTs if you wanted, but it was mostly used for like trading, and DEXs were just starting to come out on Solana. When on ETH mainnet at that time, it was already very, relatively speaking, much better established. But between 2021 to 2025, the ETH and Sol landscape changed a ton. And I think we as builders in the Solana ecosystem have much to learn from Ethereum because of, so there's really two things that matter now when I think about like us having a stablecoin like asset USD star. There's liquidity on chain, which affects peg, which affects how you mint and redeem. And then there's the yield curve, the way you think about intrinsic yield of the asset, extrinsic yield of what the asset's velocity can bring to the asset's attractiveness. So on ETH, it kind of is. I'm sorry. On ETH, it's so it's a difference so far. I think the Ethereum yield curve, if you will, or the yield spreads are more efficient, and Solana is generally speaking higher. Ethereum also has built out the best product market fit for yield so far, which is yield trading or Pendle-like products. On Solana, we're, I would say, like 8 to 12 months behind, but now I'm super bullish on where it could go because a lot of those products on Solana are more packaged. So on ETH, unless you're going to, let's say, EtherFi or like a more full vault, it's pretty hard for an average retail user to click through PT, YT, etc. On Solana, we see these primitives being built right now, but very quickly people are building on top of the primitives, including Perena. We've introduced vaults. So one of the vaults we might introduce in the future is one click, get to the USD star PT loop yield that you would otherwise need to click like 20 times to get to. So this is where I see the difference at. In the future, I think like ETH right now is taking the spotlight with all the stablecoin, Wall Street, like narrative. Solana is lagging behind a little bit in my opinion, but the wave of builders and the products that are being launched, I think are a lot more mass adoption friendly.
Would it be fair to kind of oversimplify your entry into that ecosystem as an evaluation that here is better UX today? So that gives me a really good starting point. And here is way more white space to experiment with stablecoins, introduce new stablecoins. Like I'm so confident stablecoins are going to be like the common denominator across chains. Clearly there's going to be an emergent stablecoin ecosystem here. It's still early and I want to help build it. On top of a better UX promise to begin with.
Correct. I think so. I was an ETH user before I became a Solana user, and then now I almost strictly only use high performance chains. Solana is my home, but I do use like Sui or Hype or Base once in a while. Arbitrum. Like I think the ones when you get to a certain level of UX is when you start being able to pull in non-institutional fund managers, because Ethereum is great for if you're running a liquid fund, but an average user who's not like a finance a portfolio manager is going to have a hard time navigating it. In terms of you touched on chains. I know you guys for Eco you're doing cross chain. The landscape's changed a lot this year, and I think it'll change even more next year. In that prior to Genius Act, it was really just Ethereum, Tron, one could say Ripple, and then high performance chains with Solana leading the way. Now it's Ethereum being the asset layer, Solana being the hopefully consumer layer, and then there's Tron and Plasma looking like they're competing on the payments remittance side of things, and each use case becomes more specialized. So it's yet to be seen. I feel like Solana is in a Solana and ETH both are in like the dominant position, but getting threatened is not the right word. Solana, Ethereum are in a more OG established position, but the new entrants are coming at them very aggressively.
Yeah, that's really important insight, I think, right now, which is that we're seeing sort of this categorical use case specialization kind of emerge in the cross-chain landscape, not only sort of like the intra-chain protocol ecosystem landscape, and there's tons of white space left. So I'm often asked in conversations on like a podcast or whatever, it's like, have these chains or these assets won, right? To which the answer is like, no, they haven't. They massive head start. Liquidity begets liquidity. Liquidity begets UX, begets more liquidity, right? They have great flywheels, but it's still so early. I love the plasma meme, the trillions meme. It was just ripe for the picking by somebody, but it's very meaningful to me, right? Because it's just like inevitably where things are going in terms of market caps and volume, et cetera. And so this is sort of like you hit on a key insight, I think, in kind of like the cross-chain landscape of where stable competition is happening, how it's evolving, et cetera, across these different use cases. I do want to zoom in now on Perena, though, and sort of educate our listeners about its driving motivations. And the way I would love to structure the question is, as I see it, and again, this is an oversimplification, but for the sake of this conversation, there's been kind of a season 1 and season 2, in my opinion, and you set forth this very ambitious acceleration roadmap this summer, and I think that was the beginning of season 2. We'll talk about Prime, we'll talk about, I think, Numeraire V2, et cetera. But let's talk first about season 1, the initial motivations, which I think probably kind of some of that's anticipated by my prior question, the kind of mission of it, the vision, what you learned from season 1, early Numeraire, and then we'll get into the accelerationist perspective and the expansionist perspective of the vision you set forth this summer.
I think you're absolutely right. There was a shift in seasons, commonly known as a pivot, where
I sometimes use that word lightly. I would not call it, though. I don't know. You can correct me. I don't know that I would call it, at least from my perspective, as a mission or vision pivot, so much as a roadmap evolution.
Yeah, I think you're right. I would not say we've like completely pivoted. So originally, my goal was to unify stablecoin liquidity on Solana. I think we in a way we did that with Numeraire V1. We have the largest USDC, USDT, and PiUSD tripool on Solana. What I learned through that experience is while Curve and Uniswap like stable pools work really well on ETH, I don't think that market structure remains the same on Solana because Solana's entire blockchain and market structure is different. So AMMs are great for secondary liquidity, and we may still use AMMs. But in this quote unquote, when you say season 2 or in the accelerating Perena roadmap that I posted earlier in the year, how I think about it is more like a liquidity layer where end user should not be responsible, or the end user should not be the one determining exactly which stablecoin pairs they're LPing into. Again, it goes back to the user base. For ETH, you have these like liquid hedge funds deploying capital. They will know and they will calculate the differences in points between pool A, pool B, and like pool G. On Solana, it's often retail. So what we noticed is one pool had significantly higher APY than others, and you wouldn't see people moving money to smooth it out as quickly. So it's a much better user experience if we abstract a lot of that away, such that users, all they really need to think about is here's a trusted, open-ended money market-like vehicle on chain. You deposit into it, and to the extent that we are able to risk manage responsibly, we will be able to generate some level of returns based on fees. And that's evolved even further as I receive user feedback is people are very risk on. I should have known this, but people are very risk on even when it comes to stable coins. I still remain adamant that we should not be like YOLO mega long things with stable coins. Like when I see like a 200% APY on stable coins, sorry that this is just not possible.
Mm.
Yeah,
We've been here long enough. Yeah,
yeah,
that like antenna's up when I see that. Yeah.
yeah. It's like great. You might be a perfectly high performance, like you're very good as a fund. I would not treat this as a stable coin. So
Mhm.
back to where we're going with, so for the audience here that are not familiar with Perena, USD Star now is the LP token of our tri pool, and we're migrating that actually to increase the underlying yield, or the more precise word is the underlying returns, based off of swap fees, of RWA yield, and on-chain crypto-based delta neutral trading yield. This is a hot topic of debate internally and with our partners, because we've seen how, so there's Athena, there's Sky, there's Resolve, Maple, so on and so forth. All of these that are not backed by, not just backed by T-bills, but they're doing really well on chain. So I think the risk appetite on chain certainly can hold and want things that are beyond just like the T-bill rate. But how do we present this in the most risk manageable and high yield way is very tricky, because you also have to think about all the downstream effects, including, for example, working with Eco on how to make it liquid, both on Solana and cross-chain. I'm trying to think what are other things in the accelerating Perena post we should cover. Maybe
I
you
have a
can ask
specific question. Yeah. Clarify distinction from the V1 star to the upcoming prime.
Great question. So I knew Genius was coming. I frankly did not expect it to pass so quickly. So Prime was always in the back of my mind since the beginning of Perena. But I thought I would wait for a while, get Star established, and then introduce Prime. With Genius passing, wanted to catch the timing of the period where we could sandbox it, we could experiment with a regulated stablecoin. So it really is a wall between Prime and all the Prime world is all within regulated fiat, has the fiat channels. Anything that has to do with Star, intentionally, I don't want it to be regulated, or don't want it to be in the sphere of Genius Act regulatory framework. It is purely DeFi. Now these two need to interact. So Prime will dynamically be used as a portion of collateral for a Star. But Prime is always Prime backed by various T-bills and stablecoins, and Star can be backed by higher risk, lower risk, higher yield, lower yield things, and those two coexist. Prime is going to be equal to 1. We're not giving out yield on Prime. If there is any reward, it would be similar to like a Coinbase Earn or Robinhood Gold, distributed specifically as a reward incentive, subject to regulation. For Star, it is a liquid savings account, or basically a liquid savings account. So on chain, it could grow, and it has returns. And to be extra responsible, I may say potentially even drawdowns, as anything that goes up can come down. So that's a distinction. In terms of the liquidity layer, something I think I've talked with you on Eco as well, with Perena, is also the primary versus secondary liquidity difference. So what I learned building on AMMs is the game is very different between when Curve started the tripool and where we're at now. So Circle and Tether don't tend to onboard a lot of businesses or entities because it's expensive to KYB them and pass AML checks. However, now new issuers made onboarding and KYB very easy. So a lot of us who play in the liquidity field, liquidity industry, so to say, every market maker or every on-chain liquidity layer should go KYB, because that's where you get the theoretically infinite liquidity. And you can never get that on secondary liquidity. So that I call it primary liquidity. So with Prime, we are approaching closer to primary liquidity than secondary. We'll still hold some secondary, but as much as I can, I'm KYBing with all these entities. We're starting with some of the partners that we've worked with before and trying to, we want to support as many as possible, but starting with Superstate being the Superstate and Braille, and Benji were the one, Benji by Franklin Templeton were the ones that we were able to KYB smoothly. And then we also have Agora and what was it? Agora, M0, Open Eden coming up as well. So it really depends on demand as also. Like some of these are easier because they're easier to mint and burn. Some of these are harder to mint and burn, and therefore downstream it's harder for us as a provider to provide liquidity to the ecosystem.
Got it. So maybe the strategy for Prime, it's a different use case, effectively. It's probably, again, an oversimplification just for maybe distinguish it, perhaps more of a payment use case. Stable asset can compete in the Solana ecosystem with where there's still a lot of white space for that use case. And the way to think about Star, which preceded it, is effectively sort of an extension of the three pool concept. If you're familiar with Ethereum, it's like the base LP token and what is intended to be the master stablecoin for all of Solana, basically. And you're working to obviously make it more composable over time to give it a diverse yield profile. Of course, it gains fees from the hub pool, but you want it to then be composable through your vault strategy, through your partner ecosystem with other yield strategies as well, which will become more optimized over time.
Correct. So we actually kind of what's the English expression? We're not like kneecapped by our own success, but we grew much faster than I expected. So by the time we hit 25 mil, call it TVL, the yield was basically zero. And this is the case with Curve, and they did a ton of token emissions. I wanted to do something that was more real yield based. We will still have like points programs, and we'll have rewards, but in the end, it's about like revenue, fee, sustainable like Web2 business models in a way. So with a stable swap pool, if you let it grow too big, it actually makes the economics for both LP and the project less attractive. So hence, I think like even from LP's sake, given that if they perceive risk to be all within the same bound, we should provide them with a higher return product.
And then let's talk. Okay, so if I was to describe kind of like the budding product ecosystem for this, pun intended, then I would say we've started with Numeraire, which is a stable swap for Solana. Simply put, it's evolving. It's becoming more capital efficient. You have this hub and spoke model where there's the hub pool, and these are the sort of spoke pools, which we're calling growth pools, I think, right, in the ecosystem. So that's kind of like the first product for those who have heard of Perena and Numeraire before. That is evolving to a V2, which is probably more of an order book type structure, smarter routing. Sometimes we'll use the pools if best pricing and best routing are available there. Not necessarily, though, because you're recruiting liquidity partners onto the spokes to sort of induce price competition. I think there's a very important insight in that. It's just a harbinger of more things to come. You can do it on Solana because I think you have the execution performance that you need. That was really hard to build in Ethereum until maybe now because of the gas sort of overhead of it. You're gonna need some really high performance L2s to come online like Mega ETH to really like squeeze the performance you need out of that construct. So building on Solana might make that available to you. So sort of there's the Numeraire evolution. There's the introduction of Prime as sort of this new stablecoin asset to sit in your ecosystem alongside the different instrument that is Star. And then kind of finish my sentence as far as like the stable banking stack. Why does that sort of like the foundational motivation for you? And then what do you want to realize on top of it?
So now that we have these assets with Prime, with Star, what can we let people do with it? So what people want to do, there's obviously the on-chain population that you and I fall into, but the bigger picture, why I'm so excited about stablecoins is to equalize financial accessibility. And I think, frankly, money should just not be censored in a way that it should be like email, relatively free flowing. So with that mission in mind, I think like giving every single person and business in the world access to stable coins becomes really important. And what does giving them access mean? It means letting them invest, letting them exchange, save, spend, and learn about what these are. So that's the idea behind a stable bank. Is obviously we're not a bank, we're not FDIC insured, not any of that, but we are fulfilling similar functions and pain points on chain in a very open, composable way. The big difference here is also that if your bank account is with Chase, you're almost kind of scared to close the Chase account because you're like, oh, my credit history, my like bank history, what if I can't get a bank account again? With stable banks, that's no longer the case. You can move your deposits anywhere. You can in fact take our quote unquote deposits of USD star and use it at a different exchange or protocol. So that to me is where finance should be going, at least specifically, I'll say consumer finance, or like consumer grade finance, not just like the institutional hedge funds playing around in this new playground, which is awesome, but that doesn't serve like a lot of the needs of the average person who's underbanked, unbanked, oftentimes immigrants or people in emerging markets.
Totally. You use the word accessibility for stablecoins there as kind of part of the vision for the stack you're trying to enable. It's so important. I think if you just stop and think for a second, you realize stablecoins are the way we move money on chain, right? Like investing in Bitcoin is not actually always moving money on chain. There's all these other instruments you can do it through now, and that's great. Like that's a good way for people to get crypto exposure. But if we want to move money on chain and move finance on chain, stablecoins are going to be the instrument through which we do it. And that's why stablecoin accessibility, at least to me, is so important, because it's like, if we're not moving money on chain, what are we doing here? The last thing I want to ask you is, one thing that I love so much about Perena and that stands out so much is just the aesthetic, right? Maybe Sheena's listening here as a shout out, but the aesthetic is just like beautiful and organic and distinctive. And so I wanted to just ask about the evolution of the brand aesthetic. I think it plays so well. I think it makes you noticeable. I think it makes you fun. I think it makes you trustworthy. And it's something I really appreciate about the project. And so tell us how you sort of like picked that motif, how it's evolved a little bit along the way, and why you love it.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. So Perena came from perennial. When I thought about, I was thinking about what would embody the stability and trustworthiness of almost like building a century-old financial institution that when you think about like Boney Mellon or JP Morgan, obviously we're not anywhere near there, but what would be a good theme? And I really like flowers. I have a lot of flowery things. I also wanted it to be more approachable on the feminine side because I really did not like going through DeFi. Everything was cyberpunk. Everything was like super masculine. And sometimes it's a little scary. Like, I don't know what I'm entering the 80s like curve. I like the curve design, but like the first time I saw curve fi, I was like, wow, what is this? Like, I don't understand what any of this is. So kind of like being distinct is a good way to stand out. And the evolution of brand is shifted from like British fine line floral motif to when after Sheena joined, and we also have two amazing designers also joined us. We started playing around with like different types of flavors, keeping true to the whole like floral. It's more like the money prints on the dollar bills and the old money prints, like those kinds of wave patterns. So that's like part of the actual brand. In terms of how we story tell, a lot of that, I think a blessing is that some of the team members are their first time building in DeFi. So yes, our team as a whole, some of the people on the non-technical side may be newer to DeFi, but that also means like we need to understand what we're building and convince ourselves this is a good product to build and use. So some of the storytelling naturally becomes more approachable because it is also storytelling for ourselves.
Great. I love it. It's been one of my favorite things to watch unfold, and I think it just like makes the entire concept so much more approachable. You can translate it in new and creative ways, and I've really enjoyed seeing that unfold. So with that, I think it's a good wrap. We're sort of at our promised time, at our allotted time, and I really, really appreciate you joining.
Thank you so much for having me, and shout out to Echo. When are you guys launching on Solana? You're launched on Solana already.
And we are privately live on Solana right now, and so we're sort of staging it over the course of the next few weeks. If you've hung in this long, you're getting alpha right now, audience. So I think, yeah, we sort of have a private release of it, and there is a stage, sort of like a go-to-market trilemma at the moment between Plasmatron, Solana. So at what sequence will they go out? Wait and see.
Great question, and I don't blame you. I think carefully on that one.
At what sequence will they be released? Just watch Eco, follow Eco if you don't already. You probably do if you're listening. If not, hit the follow sign or hit the follow button, and you will find out in the weeks to come. So there is the alpha carrot at the end of the show if you're listening.
All right. Thank you, Ryne. And thank you, the Eco team, for having me.
Always. Thanks, Anna.
All right.
See you.
Okay. I got to jump to another call, so I'm going to leave